Hello out there, cats and kittens. Guys, today we continue our discussion, part 2 of our speciation discussion, our macroevolution, our origin of species discussion, where, guys, yesterday we left off talking about how new species come about, and that's what macroevolution is. And guys, we talked about how usually what essentially has happened, we have a large population and something splits that population where the population becomes reproductively isolated. That's the key thing, where they can no longer reproduce with each other. And over thousands and millions of years, they evolve independently and become different species. Now, how does that occur? That's what we're going to look at today. There are these barriers that can split a population, and that's what we're going to discuss. Now, we could break these barriers into two different categories. The first ones we're going to cover are what we call prezygotic barriers. So these are barriers that prevent a zygote from forming, a successful fertilization of that egg. And guys, there's 6. We're going to cover 6 of these pre-reproduction barriers. We have geographic isolation, also known as allopatric speciation. We have ecological isolation. We have temporal isolation, behavior isolation, mechanical isolation, and gametic isolation. These are the 6 prezygotic barriers that we're going to talk about today. So, guys, let's go ahead and launch into this. Let's look at geographic isolation. Remember, also known as allopatric speciation. This is where a physical barrier splits a population. And guys, you could think of any physical barrier, a mountain range, a valley, a river, a canyon. That could definitely split a population, and it could even be man-made physical barriers like a dam, a superhighway, maybe a giant wall that someone's trying to build. Those could be physical barriers that can split a population. And once again, over millions of years, they could evolve independently of each other. For example, we think we have a case of that when we look at these species of squirrels, these close related species of squirrels that 10, maybe 50,000 years ago, a physical barrier split them. What was that physical barrier? The Colorado River split the population, and these squirrels don't swim really well, so they couldn't cross the river, and they no longer mated with each other. And what happened, they started to evolve independently of each other, where one of the population squirrels lived on the darker side of the Grand Canyon, where they were always in the shadows. So they started to develop kind of a darker pigment to their fur. And then the other population of squirrels that lived on the more sunny side of the actual Grand Canyon kind of developed a more lighter kind of fur color. And now there's areas where they could actually cross a river and they actually meet each other, but they no longer reproduce with each other. So they become 2 distinct species of squirrels. So this would be an excellent example of geographic isolation. Now, that's geographic. That's also known as allopatric speciation. Now let's look at ecological isolation, also sometimes called habitat isolation, where we have species that occur in the same area. They live in the same area. There's no physical barrier that separates them, but they just occupy different habitats, so they rarely ever encounter each other. For example, we have these 2 species of garter snakes that live in the same area. You would think it's like, oh, they're the same species. No, they're not. One of them lives in the water full time. The other one lives on land. So they never run into each other anymore where they actually reproduce. So they become 2 distinct species. It's also keeping them from becoming a single species again. We could even apply this to ligers. Guys, lions and tigers can hybridize and form ligers, which if you saw the Tiger King, that's something they were doing. They were hybridizing them in captivity. But guys, this doesn't happen in nature. And guys, tigers and lions live in the same area. There's no physical barrier that actually separates them, except lions live on the grasslands, tigers live in the rainforest, and they kind of remain distinct species. Once again, ligers or tiglons, which I like to call them, can be hybridized, but only in captivity. So this, guys, would be sympatric speciation. Once again, ecological isolation, habitat isolation. This would be sympatric because those animals live in the same area. Now, our next one, temporal isolation. Now, temporal isolation has to do with timing. Guys, this is where species that, they develop different breeding times. Closely related species, this might possibly split up that population. For example, maybe they start to mate at different times of the years, different seasons, different years, so their gametes no longer actually mix. So this would be sympatric speciation. For example, you would think skunks. Oh, skunks are all the same species. No, not necessarily. Guys, we have here the eastern spotted skunk, the western spotted skunk. Even though their mating areas overlap with each other, they don't mate because one mates in late winter, the other one in late summer. So their gametes never mix. They no longer reproduce with each other, and they became distinct species. Once again, temporal isolation, all due to timing. They start mating different times of the seasons, years, different time of the day. Now, next one, behavioral isolation. Now, this one's interesting. This one's where, all these close related species have developed very unique behavior patterns, rituals that isolate their species, and usually due to mating. They usually end up developing different mating calls, mating rituals, courtship rituals that's very unique to their species only. For example, the blue-footed booby. Guys, the blue-footed booby, what separates this bird species from others and keeps them not reproducing with other bird species, they have a very unique mating ritual. The males have to do this kind of like wobbly dance back and forth. They have to kind of show off their strength by picking up rocks and sticks, kind of show off their wingspan, and they do this cool little wobbly dance. And that's something unique to just the blue-footed boobies. It's something that actually Darwin noticed and wrote about when he visited the Galapagos Islands and other islands near South America. I actually want to show you a video, a video of this mating ritual. So let me pull that up real quick. So here is the blue-footed booby dance. So this is our male. And he's looking for a female. So he's just wandering around right now looking for that female. So he finds the female. Notice the first thing, showing off that wingspan. Starts doing a little bit of that wobbly dance. And now he wants to show off his strength, picking up some sticks, some rocks, some good nest making skills as well. She seems disinterested, but he's going to break off into his dance. Maybe the dance will do it. Here he comes in, starting to do that wobbly little dance. Oh, access denied. Ouch. Sort of like maybe some of you asking that person out to prom. Ouch. Access denied. Hey, might not be a bad thing. There might not even be a prom. I'm just kidding. No, there will be a prom. Hopefully there will be sometime at the end of the year. So once again, that is behavioral isolation. Once again, has to do with mating calls, mating rituals. And once again, we see this with birds a lot. For example, the gray crowned crane. Guys, the male usually has to do this almost ballet dance where they kind of like twist in the air and they show off their wings. Very unique to just cranes, these gray crowned cranes. I don't know. What can you say about this guy? Maybe he's trying to mate with some peacocks. He's probably going to fail because he probably doesn't know that all the courtship rituals that go with the peacock. And guys, this goes with insects as well. For example, lacewings. You would think, oh, lacewings, they're all the same species. There's like 8 different species of lacewings. Here we have 3. And guys, they have different mating calls. They beat their wings at different frequencies that is significant for just their species. So only those that recognize that frequency, that kind of little mating song that they're singing with their wings, will respond and mate, keeping them distinct species. So this was behavior isolation, also sympatric speciation. Guys, next, mechanical isolation. Now, this one's kind of a weird one. This is where there's differences in their sexual organs that prevent successful mating. Now, we see this a lot with flowers. flowers we see a lot, but also in insects as well. For example, here we have a closely related species of monkey flowers, where you would think, oh, they're the same species, but no, they have different coloration of their petals, their shape of their stigma, their female reproductive organ is completely different, that they attract different pollinators. One attracts more birds, the other one attracts more insects, and they don't cross-pollinate with each other. So they've become distinct species of flowers. And once again, this happens a lot with insects as well, where the actual sex organs of the male-female no longer fit with each other, and it prevents sperm transfer. Now, guys, this is kind of hard for us humans to kind of think of, but it happens a lot in the insect world, where once again, there's this lack of fit between sexual organs. For example, dragonflies. Guys, there's like 20 different species of dragonflies. What keeps them different species is their reproductive parts no longer fit. And if they try to, they get stuck. They either end up getting stuck and they end up dying, or they end up getting broken off, which I can't even imagine. But once again, this ends up becoming an issue. This is mechanical isolation. Sexual parts no longer fit. Now, our last one is gametic isolation. This is where the sperm of one species cannot fertilize the egg of another species. So, you know, there's no issue with the sex organ. The sperm just can't fertilize that egg. So usually there's mechanisms that prevent this, usually sometimes a biochemical behavior where the sperm can't penetrate the egg because there's a kind of like that lock and key fit where it has to be a perfect match. Or there's also chemical incompatibility where the sperm just can't survive in the female reproductive tract. The immune system kind of wipes it out. Good example, sea urchins. You would think, oh, all sea urchins are the same species. No. Guys, in the Pacific Ocean, there's red sea urchins, there's purple sea urchins. They live right next to each other. But guys, they are gametically isolated from each other. What they do is the males will release the sperm just into the water, and that sperm will float and penetrate the females that are nearby. But here's the thing, purple sea urchin sperm cannot fertilize red sea urchin sperm females. They can't fertilize that egg, and vice versa. The sperm ends up dying inside. It never penetrates that egg. So once again, gametic isolation. Guys, on a little note, if you're ever scuba diving in the Pacific Ocean and you see sea urchins and then suddenly the water becomes cloudy, don't swallow that water. Yeah, you don't want to get any of that stuff in your mouth. So guys, that's what I wanted to cover for this second part. 6 prezygotic barriers. Once again, they prevent the zygote from even forming. We have geographic isolation. We have ecological isolation, also known as habitat isolation. We have temporal isolation, behavioral isolation, mechanical isolation, and this last one, gametic isolation. Now, before I leave, I want to show you one more video of a speciation event that we're actually seeing right now at this time with a group of this is a speciation video, once again, of a speciation event happening right now during our lifetime over the last 20, 30, 50,000 years. And guys, it's not very long. It's about 3 minutes, a little bit over 3 minutes. Guys, make sure you focus. I could possibly ask questions about this on the quiz.
Meet a type of terrestrial salamander found in California. Now meet another. And another. These salamanders are members of the same species, so why do they look and behave so differently? In California, populations of these salamanders became separated geographically, evolving over millions of years to adapt to different environments. They've changed so much that they are on their way to becoming entirely separate species. David Wake of the University of California, Berkeley explains.
The history of this species complex began about 10 million years ago in the ancient redwood forests of Northern California, where we have today this form picta, which is highly variable both genetically and in terms of coloration. There were 2 migratory routes followed by animals as they moved into Southern California. One along the Sierra Nevada mountain chain, where animals moved into the forested region. The other along the coastal mountains. They avoided the Great Central Valley.
The populations that gradually moved down the forested region of California relied on blending in with their environment. Animals with good camouflage tended to survive more and produce offspring with similar traits. As the salamanders progressed south over millions of years, the markings became more distinct.
At the end of the chain in Southern California, we have this form Claveri, which is the extreme of variation, showing the largest blotches, most bold marking. These were all then camouflaged organisms that were hiding from predators. Along the coast, a different strategy was followed. Here, the organisms adopted the color pattern and behavior of dangerously poisonous newts, and they became, instead of camouflage, they were advertising their resemblance to these dangerously poisonous animals and gaining an advantage because of their mimicry. So what happened is that you had two differently adapted lineages moving to the south, and by the time they reached the southern end, they had essentially evolved into different species. But
so class, notice once again that I'm going to finish the video, but that was geographic isolation. Notice there was a great valley that separated these salamanders. One side of the salamanders, one population adapted more camouflage. This one over here adapted more mimicry, mimicking a poisonous newt. And now there's areas where they overlap, but they don't really, even though they could reproduce, those offspring you're going to see that aren't that successful. They're kind of on their way to becoming reproductively isolated. So let's finish this off.
At certain areas, for example, in the Palomar Mountain areas in San Diego County, we get these animals, which are hybrids, and the hybrids are neither similar to the dangerously poisonous animals. They're not good mimics, nor are they good animals in terms of camouflage. So these organisms are essentially dead ends.
These hybrid offspring are not well adapted to their environment and are therefore less likely to survive. The two parent subspecies that produce the hybrids are well on their way to becoming entirely separate species, evolving just as Darwin described in his theory of evolution.
I think Darwin would love this example because it shows exactly the sorts of patterns that he was talking about. Gradual adaptive divergence, leading eventually to the establishment of new species.
Okay, so class, once again, notice an excellent example of speciation with these salamanders. Guys, this will finish off our part 2 of our speciation, our macroevolution, our origin of species lecture. Guys, part 3 will drop tomorrow, kind of ending our speciation, then getting ready for our origin of life notes. Guys, make sure that you continue to check your Edmodo, your Instagram page for the latest news and updates when it comes to the course. Guys, make sure you're focused. Make sure you stay focused at home. Make sure you're getting the notes down. Make sure you're working on the problem sets, the speciation problem sets. And guys, don't forget about the Khan Academy. Khan Academy lessons, get those, watch those videos, read those articles. That's excellent information, making sure you're understanding this content. Guys, there'll probably be a Zoom meeting soon. I'll announce that through Edmodo and also the Instagram page. And guys, make sure that you're also getting ready for the AP Bio exam. Those of you who signed up for the AP Bio exam, I dropped some important information on that on Edmodo, a page about what the exam is going to look like, and I'll continue to kind of drop more information, some review sessions coming up, and also practice problems. Well, guys, that's it for today. Guys, have yourself an awesome day.